Hello everyone, I'm Cheese. I hope you're all doing fantastic today. My keyboard is still broken and therefore it is another unscripted video. Yay, I guess. In order to balance out the negativity from my most hated anime character tropes, even though I know that YouTube strives on negativity, I decided to talk about some of my favorites, and in the process of giving some thought to this, I realized it's way harder to analytically talk about anything I actually really like. So keep that in mind as you watch. Of course, the usual disclaimers apply. These are my opinions, but of course, as a content creator, my opinions are gospel and yada yada yada. And all of these character tropes can also be done terribly, terribly badly, but more often than not, they don't end up being atrocious, even when maybe not executed to the highest of margins. And with that, let's kick off the list with my number 5, and if you've seen that previous video about my most hated stuff, this should come as a no surprise, because it's the exact same number 5. That happy idiot that fumbles their way through life and somehow manages to come out on top, often making friends along the way. In the previous video, I explained that when done poorly, this often leads to very annoying characters like Naruto, but when done well, and usually by doing it well, I mean you give some kind of explanation to how they come out on top that is connecting with the viewers on a very emotional level, and a very, very good example of this is Monkey D. Luffy from One Piece. And if you've seen any of the more recent Luffy fights since, I say more recent, since Paramount Wars of like years in the back, years in the past, I don't need to explain what I mean by this. Luffy is great, and really the quintessential example of this character trope done perfectly. And number 4 on the list is the comedically overpowered character, but with some kind of a tangible downside. Now, I'm not talking about the stupidly overpowered isekai protagonists or ancient demon lords awakening in modern magic school ooh kind of stuff. No, I generally dislike those. What I'm talking about more is characters written, well, mostly by one, if I'm being honest. Mob Psycho or Saitama from One Punch Man. Really those like god tier characters that have some kind of a humanizing element in their downside, be it Saitama's being a massive moron or Mob's crippling social anxiety kind of stuff. Like, that helps you connect with this kind of character that would otherwise be in the god tier list in terms of power, and I really like that. It's great fun and it often makes for very amusing storytelling. Number 3 is a bit of a weird one, and that's the realistic person character trope. Hear me out on this. These are most common on very grounded in reality shows, slice of life rom-coms, but there are exceptions, and it is those exceptions that really make this trope into a gem. I'll get to the exceptions in a second. What I mean by this kind of character is someone that feels like they could be a real person you'd run into on the street and become friends with. Someone with realistic problems, dreams, flaws, and ambitions. The first example that comes to mind, of course, is from a rom-com. That's most of the cast of something like Rent a Girlfriend. Very, very grounded. But those exceptions. The first and probably the best example of this from an exception point of view comes from an isekai of all things. And that is Rudeus from Mushoku Tensei. Now, I may dislike Rudeus on more levels than one, and for a good reason. But he really embodies that kind of a realistically flawed person. He has a great trauma that has made him somewhat cooked in the head in certain regards, but he is that kind of very imperfect human being in a very grounded manner in a world that is way far from being grounded. There's magic, there's dragons. But yeah, Rudeus and Mushoku Tensei's world, the entire world really embodies this trope, and that is the human realistic take on something that should be fantastical, and it is amazing. And then we get to my number 2, which is kind of continuing on from the weird pick from number 3, and that is a character that is a little, or sometimes a bit more than a little, crazy. But in the right kind of way, excluding stuff like super crazy yanderes that just drive me nuts by being really annoying. Important note, there are many kinds of crazy, and the kind of crazy really determines what kind of a character we're talking about and to what extent the craziness must be executed. These characters can easily be protagonists, side characters, antagonists, and it really depends on the level and realism and gruesomeness of the crazy. Good examples of like positively crazy protagonists would be someone like Hanji from Attack on Titan, or more recently Nazuna from Call of the Night. Go watch Call of the Night if you haven't, it's amazing, it's airing right now. And then you have those sort of on the borderline crazies, like Yor from Spy X Family, who is a very wholesome character in her family life, and her craziness with blood and murder is really off-putting in a oddly positive manner. It's creepy in a good way. And then we get to those crazy antagonists, and in my opinion there is less leeway in what kind of a crazy antagonist you can write. You can write a crazy terrorist who just likes blowing up everyone, and that often ends up being rather boring. But then on the other hand, you have those so realistically insane characters that it is just utterly terrifying to witness, because you know that kind of person could exist in real life, often with less powers than in anime, but still. And really the quintessential example of this is Don Quixote Doflamingo from One Piece, who is probably the greatest embodiment of a psychotic sociopathic murderer in anime, and he's utterly terrifying, and I feel like that is the best way to represent this kind of a character, unless you want to go to that fun, crazy kind of side. Really, an amazing character tropes, absolutely love it. I want more of this, but again, done really well. And finally, before we go to my favourite, it's time for a couple of honourable mentions. The first one is the cold and calculating, but for a reason, often that reason being some kind of a war trauma, but importantly, not edgy characters. These can either come to this category, like someone, say Levi from Attack on Titan, war veteran or combat veteran, lost their subordinates, lost their friends, and has kind of become very uncaring. And on the other side, we have someone like Ogata from Golden Kamuy, who's just killed so many that he's lost all feeling of humanity. On the other, like on the third flip side of the coin, you can also have the characters that go crazy, and then they end up being, in my opinion, better than maybe Ogata or Levi. Example would be someone like Tanya the Evil. Really great character trope, just about didn't make my list, would have easily been there if I made top 10, but in all honesty I couldn't think of 10 things I really like. It's hard to talk about stuff you like, come on. But our other honourable mention is the Battle of the Minds kind of character. Now these can either be, well, these mostly are stupidly intelligent people, to a point where it's ridiculous. Good examples would be some of the more unorthodox fights in JoJo. Now, I haven't finished JoJo, but the first one that comes to mind is the stuff that Jotaro pulls off in Stardust Crusades. Really out there, really kind of stuff that a normal human would never think of. And a more recent example would be, of course, your boy Kong Ming. Admittedly, Kong Ming is a genius as a historical character, so kind of fitting. But again, just about didn't make the top 5. And then we move on to my all-time favourite anime character trope. And that is the happy-go-lucky, often either parental or mentor kind of character that just goofs around and does silly shit until shit hits the fan. Great examples are from the more parental side of thing. We have Sugimoto Saichi, again from Golden Kamuy. Utterly love Golden Kamuy, go watch it if you haven't. He is that kind of a, to Ashteriba, he's the kind of like very fatherly, warm figure who more often than not goofs around with his friends. And then you have those moments when he shouts that he is Fujimi no Sugimoto and just proceeds to level an entire city kind of stuff. And then on the mentory side of thing, we have someone like Gojo Satoru from Jujutsu Kaisen, of course. Now, in the first season of the series, we didn't really see this serious side of Gojo. And then I went to see the movie, and there is the scene where the bad guys are attacking Kyoto, and Gojo gets angry. And that is just, like, that kind of shit hits the fans and shivers down my spine, and it is amazing. Really, kind of a rarely well-done character. Other good examples I could think of would be, what's-his-face, Shanks from One Piece. We haven't seen much of Shanks, but that moment in Paramount War where he ends the war, again, really great. And you can also, again, do this poorly. Gildart from Fairy Tail would be an example of not-so-great version of this. But yeah, that concludes my list. I hope you either agreed. If you haven't agreed, let me know down in the comments below. If there's something you think is way better than this, again, let me know. I'm really interested in your opinions. If you like this, like the video. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel, yada yada yada. I have been Cheese, and with this, I bid thee farewell. And I see you guys, hope to see you guys next time with more anime goodness. Ta-ta for now.